I would like to welcome Professor Jessica Thompson from Northern Michigan University, Professor Denise Keel from Western Michigan University, and Professor Charlotte Cunha from the University of Versailles in France. And of course, Eussen is staying with us on this panel as well. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, good morning. I'll go first. My name is Jess Thompson, and I'm a professor in the College of Business at Northern Michigan University, where I teach classes in sustainable business strategy and environmental advocacy.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Cunha from the University of Versailles Quentin-en-Yvelines. I'm an associated professor in land use planning, and I'm teaching mostly lecture on adaptation to climate change adaptation planning, some lectures in climate policy and geopolitics, and as well in participatory process linked to environmental issue.
Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Keel. I'm an associate professor jointly appointed in political science and the Institute of the Environment Sustainability at Western Michigan University, just down the road here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Well, I guess it's no road. We're all virtual here, so we're all in the same space. I came up as a forester. That's my undergraduate degree. And then I turned to the dark side of policy and politics and did my PhD in environmental politics. And so I teach environmental policy and environmental law.
Let's start a little bit by learning about all your different programs. You all teach about climate change and you all teach about sustainability, and you do it in different universities in different countries, but also you are in very different disciplines. So the way how you really portray climate change and sustainability might be quite different. Could you share a little bit about what are your programs, how they're related to sustainability and climate change? Who are your audiences? What exactly you teach? So maybe just a couple of minutes about your institutions and your programs.
Let's begin. I forgot to say that I'm as well the Dean of Student of my faculty, so I will speak about all our program. And we have different programs linked to climatic change, some in physics and also some in social sciences with minor in physics as well. So we always have programs who are pluridisciplinary. We have in social sciences, we have 3 master programs who speak about different aspects on environmental issue and climatic change. The first one is a program about adaptation in climate change, another in sustainable mobilities and transition, and the third one about health science and sustainability of territories. The 3 social sciences programs aims to lead students to go to work within municipalities and other public organizations. And finally, we have a last program in corporate social responsibilities, which aims to train students to go in private companies to change things from the inside.
Thank you again for having me here. And I do just want to say this conference is amazing. Thank you for pulling it together virtually. We got to attend in person, several of us, last year, and it was really wonderful. And I am representing a lot of colleagues today, many of whom could all be on this panel. So I'm going to try to speak and represent them as best I can. So first of all, I would say that we have our Institute of Environment Sustainability. Started as an environmental studies program in 1972, and we all know why those decades are important. And we have a coordinate major. So it's a really interesting program in that originally all the faculty were jointly appointed. And so we each brought in those unique disciplines, and each student still to this day that wants to major in environment sustainability also essentially has a double major. So it really brings in that interdisciplinary effect. Today, I'm still a joint appointed faculty, right? And that's how we try to develop those programs, but there are also 100% faculty in the Institute now. Since 2012, 3 of my colleagues founded what we call the WMU Climate Change Working Group. And I have chaired that group since 2014. They essentially just let me run meetings. They're very kind about that. And we then first developed a minor in climate change studies. And it is also interdisciplinary. So there's about 20 different faculty from business, from me in political science and sociology and the sciences and the humanities, who all work together on that program. And it really is scaffold. It has 2 different versions for a 1,000 level entry course, one of which is team taught, where we bring in all the other instructors in their disciplines to talk about, well, why is history important and how does history look at climate change, for example. And so that's a minor that we really intend our goal is that every student and staff member could be educated on climate change, which is why we started with a minor that we could add on, right, to any student's already existing major, sort of modeling that same interdisciplinary approach. And the goal there is really to develop informed and engaged citizens who can draw multiple disciplines into appropriate conclusions, right? So we're really focused on that. And lastly, I would add, just this year, fall 2020, we're very excited. Our climate change working group and my colleague in political science is starting a graduate certificate. And that program is in climate change policy and management. So we housed that in political science, but it still has some of the basic grounding in science, as well as, again, adaptation. And I teach a course in environmental sustainable development. And that can be a standalone, right? You can come get just a certificate from Western, or again, as this add-on to existing graduate students, because we know, right, that every discipline, every job is going to have to know something about how to address climate change. And that's really our goal with both the minor and this new graduate certificate.
You know, Charlotte is doing this work across the institution. Denise has got this across disciplines. And not that the Upper Peninsula is behind in things, but we don't have an infrastructure built yet. So all of the climate change education and curriculum that has been integrated across our institution has really happened at the grassroots level. It has happened because certain faculty are passionate and we work together and we reach out across these disciplines. So we're making things work without actually having the structure. Now, that said, we're working towards building a structure our goal is that Western Michigan model with the minor that cuts across curriculum. But we just finished an audit of all of the courses and faculty research on campus for ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Ed, if you're familiar with that, STARS audit. And what we found is over 80% of our faculty are doing climate-related research. Like, it's all happening. We just haven't put it into a really robust outcomes assessment and program. And so now what we're doing is we're looking at, what do our students know when they graduate about climate change? And it's really exciting to know that even without a formal program, they are getting it in their history class, in their environmental science class, in their English class. There's these English professors that are doing incredible things with writing and phonology, and even over in the College of Business, where we're talking about what capitalism means in a changing climate. And that's what I do. I teach classes about reimagining capitalism and changing the system, knowing that not just our resources, but our social and economic structures require radical changes to be sustainable. So I would say we're in the baby stages, but it's an honor to be next to programs that have been vetted and built. And there's a lot to learn from how other institutions have done this.
Wouldn't it be great if we could put all of that together, If I have the great work you're doing, and it's so in parallel with what we're all trying to do and to achieve. Wouldn't it be fantastic to offer a climate change and sustainability course as an open educational resource, just globally? Just once and for all, not be restricted. I would warmly invite for that and prepare to host it and to come up with every operational expense necessary. I think that would be fantastic to do.
And that really leads me to the next question. You all are advocating for integration. You all are advocating for holistic learning in very different contexts, different countries. How we can bring it to schools? It's already challenging enough to do it in the universities, even in the universities who have active commitment to interdisciplinary education. It seems to be much more difficult to do it in our secondary education system, where there are very different standards for science and social studies, and for language arts and for math. So how this idea of integration can be combined with also teaching students what they need to do for their disciplines?
Just a brief introduction remark to this question. We noticed indeed that the job can be quite easily done in primary and can quite easily be done in university, where the students are, wanting to learn and bright. And when the kids are very young, they're very open and want to play and do everything. The job gets hard at the age of 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old students who have really other things on their minds and are now scaffolded and trapped in these 50-minute classes, to put it that way. So we focused on secondary to crack that nut. I think if we can solve secondary, we can take the whole chain, and the rest will follow, because secondary will involve primary and will feed further education. So when secondary is solved and universities reach out, we've got this chain of this process of learning. What we did, Elena, in a very brief word, is thematic learning. So students took up themes that interest them. The trick of the trade was to convince the teachers and show the teachers that their subjects and disciplines were warmly covered. They just didn't notice. That was the only thing. Too simple an answer, actually. So the associative capacity of the teachers, to put it more academic, is the main challenge.
Interesting.
And plus, then I can address a question Kobe asked, the displacement of funding for schools is a major challenge. We should be very careful, especially in primary, secondary education, that the funding which comes available is not soaked up in this system between the president and the schools. In the Netherlands, 70% of all money, to put it very black and white, is going down the drain. It is not reaching schools. Schools have to comply with certain STEM projects or inventive and education projects. They are forced to hire consultants, to put it very black. Perhaps we are hurting ourselves now, or some of you don't want to insult anybody, but the average consultant in environmental education in the Netherlands takes between $1,000 and $1,800 a day. A day. Makes 26 times the salary of a teacher. I think we should stop that nonsense and hand the money, at least then for the Netherlands and Europe, just to the schools and the teachers, guys. Okay, statement made.
I think you're preaching to the choir on that one, Joss. I don't think any of us would disagree with that analysis. So let me just chime in here on this question though of integration and how we really do that. And Jess, in no way are you behind us. I should have also mentioned that our climate change working group is still all voluntary. So we, everyone is doing that service on top of their normal load in order to make that happen, and it's because of their passion and dedication. But there really are, again, some ways to think about building that interdisciplinary team that I think is really valuable. And I think the reason why we still all contribute to that and contribute courses to that and do the work is because we get value out of meeting with each other. And so one of the ways that we deal with climate change and collaboration and integration is I rely on my colleagues, and we rely on our working group meetings to educate each other, right? So I know, over the last 8 years, I have seen my science colleagues give enough presentations that I might be able to give part of the presentation, but I probably couldn't answer the question, right? And they've seen me talk enough about politics that they can also do that. And we've read the Cli-Fi novels. And so I really think it is relying on your team and the experts and in your faculty to help teach each other, to call for that integration of knowledge. And I would make a plug that we do try to be very conscious about that interdisciplinarity. The science is important, and the humanities, this is such a moral and political question just as much as it is a scientific question. And we do that in a couple other ways, I would say, through having lots of different guest speaking events and getting our faculty kind of out there on the speaking circuit and making sure that we're all communicating that same message, as well as we have a monthly book club where we all read the same book that kind of keeps us current, and it's always maybe outside of your discipline and challenges you a little bit. But to Joss's point, he's absolutely though right that this comes from faculty. At the university higher education level, and you have to incentivize faculty. There currently still are some barriers to rewards for this kind of interdisciplinary work. The rewards are great with my colleagues, but it does take more time to create a program like this and for us to all understand each other. So I think that we can do some better things with an institutional commitment, as far as cross-listing courses and team teaching and guest lectures and all those kinds of things that we do right now, voluntarily being better rewarded in the system. And just like you, we were surprised. We've been, operating for 6-8 years now. And last year we put out a call for new teaching fellows to see what else was going on. And we were amazed at the amount of faculty that we didn't know about on our own campus that were also still teaching something to do with climate change. And so a little bit of financial incentive. We put the call out and you became a climate change teaching fellow. And I think that's been going to be a really nice way to continue the collaboration and integration of all the disciplines.
We also found very briefly, Denise, that once you do that you find this togetherness, teachers gave proof of immense more capacity than one would take for granted now. Teachers have much more to say if you give them freedom of speech and freedom of movement. So even you don't even need the money. You need, I think, perhaps Jessica can elaborate on that a bit. You need public-private partnership.
Yeah.
For example, given companies we share like Manpower, Metronics, I don't doubt for a second if we step up to them and say we've got this community going on. We want this climate change education all around the world as an open educational resource, AAA rated. I can guarantee you, City, Metronics, Manpower will have us covered. And I'm not afraid to do that. So it's not green, it will raise discussion, but I want to have that discussion.
I would like to take a question from the audience, question and comment. I would like to add a question. The standard for each content in secondary are not the issue. They try to use them together. The structure of the school day, the assessment requirements, teacher credential requirements, and the lack of time for teacher professional learning are more of an issue than the standards. How might break this down? How we might break this down with the federal and state system as well as on the district level? So again, you all should be able to see this question. So if any of you want to start live.
This question gets at just the essence of the fact that we've been educating people with a 200, 300-year-old system, an old model, and the problems that we're facing are way more complex. And we've been able to do a lot at the local level. It really was our community that came to the university and said, hey, let's create a climate adaptation task force. And y'all should be part of the steering committee. You should facilitate this as a neutral entity in our community. But this larger issue that Wendy brings up about the structure of the institution of education is just like the institution of capitalism and industry, just like the institutional of governance. I mean, all of these things were made in an era when life was different and science was different and our level of knowledge was different. And so a lot of the advocacy and the work that I know I push my students to is how can we reimagine this and start to build local structures? Because I do think right now, at least in the United States, change is not going to happen from the federal level down. We need to work in our communities and get on school boards, get on city commissions, planning commissions, and start to write the policy and redesign at that local level for that area. And I'm witnessing this here in my region, it's going to percolate out as people see, oh, there's actually not just a better way of doing things, a more sustainable, a cleaner, a healthier way of doing things. And I wish I had like, okay, this is who you call to change that barrier, and this is how you shut this down. But it takes a lot of hard work, full-time job on the front line of reshaping the structures of our historical institutions.
Absolutely. But one taking this question first now very, very practical, on the practical side, I hope I understand the essence of the question correctly. So where do I get the time, the money? I'm just a teacher. I have to do my program. I fully respect that. I think the teachers told us, that the ones that created the OPEDUCA concept, they first looked in the mirror and they said the 50 minutes we teach now is actually effective for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. The rest of class is getting things in order, getting planning on the way and saying goodbye again and paying attention to an individual student. So they said, wow, if we give these early morning colleges, 20-minute colleges, and we do Pythagoras for 300 kids, and we do the Second World War for 150, if they can't ask a question anyway, we can just give college, also in first year high school. So they started practicing that and gained time. When kids learn together in teams of 4 or 5 in the afternoon, or visit companies, or have students visiting them, or parents or people from industry, teachers gained time. So we found 20 to 40% teacher capacity can be released, can be freed, but then should be given back to the teacher. That is essential. The teacher should have the opportunity to study language, to go to Medtronic, or to do a dance. Yeah? So there is time within the constraints of the system. It is just a wise thing to use them. It can be used. That's the message I want to bring across. So you don't have to destroy the system. You don't have to follow gurus for deep learning and blah, blah, blah. No, edu-brubble, it's not necessary. You don't need these big dramatic things because they will all develop over the teacher's heads. They are up there. They're not theirs, I think. Otherwise, please give me questions on the chat that I'm not right. But I want to respect and professionalize and re-honor the teacher. That is my drive. So I'm not on the side of life that says teachers are stupid and old-fashioned and they don't understand. No, Jesus, they're all we got. They're all we got. So let's work with that from a respectful perspective. And then I think we have these opportunities already available to us.
Thank you. There is another question from the audience that we are going to take from John Forslin. Hello, John. You all have wonderful sustainability initiatives. Can anyone among you reach out to the various communities via a sustainability-free university concept, allowing anyone to join in the discussion? We private citizens are interested and want to support the development of a future-oriented education model that will help our kids flourish.
The remodeling of our education, and we have to reach out to, this is why this conference exists. This is why you've created this wonderful resource, right? And I know our K through 12 teachers need to keep up with their accreditation, right? And so our working group has tried to model some events and programs like this that reach directly out to those audiences and make sure that we are helping that go along, right? It'd be my vision that we remodel climate change and sustainability to be a holistic educational, right? I think that's what my colleagues are saying here. A lot of this time is spent in each of our disciplines, and not that specialization of knowledge hasn't had great gains and we've mastered a lot, but we are missing a holistic component. And I think that's what we talk about with sort of lifting that up. But I totally agree. This question is great about what about the open access? And this is what I mean by about different reward systems for this behavior, right? Right now, right, a lot of higher education faculty don't get as much credit as they maybe should for all those talks that they give to our community. And so we've really tried to model that. We had a whole Fridays for Future, a whole year-long series last year, every Friday at noon. We had either a content expert or a community member or a skills-based action from one of our groups that could give that knowledge. And we record those and we put them out there. And we're doing the same thing here in the virtual world. So I think that there are some ways to make sure that is a public intellectual, right? That we are all in this together and making those open access resources. I think probably our lecture series is the best way that we do that.
John, taking my Dutch and liberal and brutal role sometimes, John, I think your question comes down to it, is there a sphere, is there a plaza, is there a space to maneuver where we can maneuver freely? That's the way I read your question. So I think that the people you're watching now from these universities, these wonderful ladies, can accept the existence of such a plaza. But there is an enormous power in the US as in the EU that will be against the creation of this kind of freedom of education. It won't be the French, absolutely. The last of them will be the French blocking it. But the idea of the OPEDUCA project is not to be dependent on any kinds of organization. That's why I'm not on the payroll. Sounds ridiculous, John, but that's one of the answers. I'm not on anybody's payroll. I don't make money unless a parent or a teacher or an industry says you did something worthwhile for $50 and I catch $50. But that takes courage of schools and secondary, of universities, of cities, to honor that freedom of learning. That is quite innovative. Don't underestimate it. And I read John's question like this. Can one create that space for learning? I think, yes, it's very difficult, but this can be done.
Looks like everyone is saying that everybody should be educated about climate change and everybody should know what to do. And it's really quite complicated. And so what is the role of universities, and also what is the role of secondary education in communicating science-based information that really seems to be right now necessary for making any rational decision? Like whatever decision we make, what to eat, what to wear, where to live, what kind of lifestyle to practice, it's all about climate change. So what is the role of the universities? Should it be formalized? Should it be just kind of being completely ad hoc? I think we hear different opinions and different views. Would any of you would like to elaborate a little bit more?
I can begin for this question because it's more linked to my research, much more than lectures, but of course, as I'm doing master program, both are linked. I mean, I work with students and students doing placement in laboratory. And I think fundamentally that universities have a role with municipalities and other public institutions to play by transfer of knowledge and as well in a larger way to collaboration between, because I realize since 10 years now that most of the public organization and municipality don't have the capacity, the internal capacity to work in climate change and adaptation planning in their services. Most of they are land use planner, but they have very little knowledge in climate change, and the things are evolving very fast, and it's difficult for them to understand physical climatic science as well. And so as a social sciences researcher, we have a role to play to transfer knowledge, at least to help communication. So it's really important that we work with this establishment and public organization to maybe help them, or at least work with them to transfer knowledge and to help them to take to have maybe a larger view than their own focal everyday problems and everyday planning.
I agree, Charlotte, absolutely. But since I'm by far the oldest in this panel, let me make a very old-fashioned brief remark. I think university should go back to the forum that they have once been. Not the institute, not nursing, but opening the debate, being the place to meet where knowledge is articulated, where discussion is held, and as a result of that, young people get educated. So the university should be again that neutral, open ground to meet. And also people from municipalities should be relearned and should come to universities, to this plaza, to learn together.
I will echo that. You know, we definitely take both of your comments to heart. And I think everyone in the Climate Change Working Group, again, I'm trying to represent a lot of people today. would say that it is absolutely our role to be a public intellectual, and that we don't just do our work for the journals. Our research is important, but the point here is for us to be sharing that work with our communities and with all the constituents. I mean, I'm at a public university, so maybe that's a little bit different and more ingrained in my institutional approach, but we really see ourselves, of course, with due care, right? I mean, we are going to be coming from the research lens, whether that be the science or my own political science research will tell you that once one community adopts something, diffusion happens, and we do learn from each other, right? And we can bring those kinds of things, exactly what Charlotte is saying. We think of ourselves as a resource of expertise that should and could be drawn upon in all of our community initiatives, and partner closely with our city and other groups. And let's not forget our students, right? One of the hardest things to do is to get that experiential piece, but the students really benefit from the place-based learning and being involved in those activities. So just one quick example, we helped our city and county and township write these climate emergency declarations, and students got to be a part of that and go to the public meeting, and maybe some of them are able to take on more of that research and place-based learning, and that's a win-win for all of us, right? Helps our research and helps build those town-gown relationships, as well as give the students a piece that they can move forward in this learning. So I think it's crucial that we play that role as universities.
Climate change has been increasingly politicized in the United States, especially in the past years. With public being increasingly divided, especially when it comes to solutions for climate change. I really cannot agree, especially, what to do about it. What about France and the Netherlands? Are there any similar disagreements that are happening in Europe about what to do, what should be done to mitigate climate change? But also how we speak about climate change, how we agree or disagree about it. So this question probably would mainly to Charlotte and Jos, but I also hope that we will continue with follow up with some thoughts on the United States as well.
The debate, it's much, much softer in France. I mean, we don't have the same type of contestations than in US. I mean, first it was quite different because in Kyoto, for example, for the Kyoto Protocol, the French didn't have an objective of zero emission to reduce because of our nuclear energy. So it was easier for French people to accept that. And then for the Conference of Parties in Paris, we were leader in the climate agreement, and so we're part of European Green Deal, in energy transition. So it's easier in France. We don't have the same type of contest, but the thing, and we have not so much climato-sceptic in France, very nearly no. And so it's more about action that we have debate. Some enterprises, they don't want to do the things because of competitivity, and so we need regulation to push enterprise to do things. But it's very rare that really people said, no, I don't believe in climate change. No, I don't want to do anything. It's more subtle. So I mean, it's more debate about action on what we can do, what we have to do.
One brief remark about democracy politics. The one thing that really caught my attention the previous 6 months, while CNN is steaming up their reporting about how to kill Trump, I scanned 7 channels, 6-7 channels in the US every night. That's why I stay up very late. What I don't understand is why there is no discussion. There is politics and blaming each other and fighting with each other. If you turn on German TV or Austrian TV or Dutch TV, people are trying to get sensible discussions on the way. It's totally not part of that. If you make a policy statement, it's pretty tricky here in the Netherlands. It's about practitioners, it's about industry, it's about the university professors, it's about doctors and philosophers. They make circles, have open, very high level, very strong debates. There is nothing with politics. Our prime minister even said last week, I am not the captain on this ship. And he's right, especially in Netherlands, the last thing you should do is appear as the boss. Yeah? We will never accept that. So this means that also climate change is on the table, is on the street. Yeah? We can criticize Fridays for Future, and I don't mean that negative, yeah? But we can speak out in the open and say we don't like that. Is Greta a show? Isn't it actually Greta's teacher that came up with the idea? Why a movie? Yeah? So that's typically Dutch. We don't think we speak correct or right or just, yeah? But we have an open debate. Yes, we have an open debate. I'm very proud of that. It doesn't always make sense, we make stupid and miserable decisions, let me be honest, yeah? Because we are 70 million experts. But that's democracy.
If I could just say, as the political scientist in the room, one quick comment about the US. So absolutely, though, the public is not divided on this issue. I follow very closely the Yale Communication and Climate Change program and their polling. 74% of Americans understand this issue. Less of them still understand that it's human caused, but we're over 60% now. This is not actually a publicly divided issue. This is absolutely a result of, at the national level, partisan politics and a bit of an elite stranglehold on money in politics and campaign finance and all sorts of things if you come take my course. But at the local and state level, that's a very, very different thing. And we are actually having those open discussions. Here in Michigan, our governor just passed some directive orders that will put Michigan, we are talking about the actual solutions finally. And I would say the other response to that I usually have is it's not just about the environment. And this is why we must view climate change as an interrelated issue and crisis. If we are also talking about the economics and the justice piece and the jobs and why this is a public health crisis, that's how you move that partisan needle. So that's my 2-cent political advice for everybody in the States here.
And I would just say it's not just politics, it's mainstream media as an entertainment industry. What has happened in the United States is the television has not become a place for forums of discussion, but for mindless entertainment. And so even, you can look at different lawsuits. Fox News will say we're an entertainment agency. We are not a news truth portraying entity. We are here to entertain, to finance advertising. And so, or to gain advertising dollars. And I think that has created the toxic seepage that makes exactly what Denise is talking about. We aren't as divided as it appears on the nighttime news. This is a construction that has helped to build wealth for a very small few number of people.
And I didn't want to insult anything, I just want to criticize CNN and Fox, because I share the misery. And there is not an American I know that would be divided or talking nonsense on these issues. So that's what we are flabbergasted about here. There are so many kind people, so many intelligent, experienced people, and elderly and young in the whole of the United States. Yesterday on ZDF, the biggest German channel, it was still, again, the question, where are you? Where have you all gone? That's from the warmth of our hearts. So we don't want to hear about Biden. We don't want to hear about Trump. We want to hear about you guys. We just want to learn and live together. So we miss you. Most open and frank. Come in again.
Well, we're having this conversation in the middle of the global pandemic, in the middle of the health crisis. So do you see any analogies between making collective and also individual decisions informed by science in response to COVID and in response to climate change?
Only one thing then, perhaps to annoy or trigger, the togetherness is the mutual thing. Again, we are faced with the fact we need each other, we influence each other, and we are thrown against the wall that the we always discuss, the we, big, beautiful people all together, not always exists. There is a lot of I in the world. Otherwise, we would have mastered COVID months ago. There is too much I.
I don't want to repeat that point, but it really, at the beginning, I was like, okay, we are all in this together globally, just like climate change. We are all in this together. We will start. And it didn't take 4 weeks, 4 months, 6 months for it to become politicized and media exasperated in the same way that climate change had become. But I think if you're in a community, you do see these quick pivots. I know that was a word that got overused really early in the pandemic, but we saw people make radical lifestyle changes quickly. And that's the kind of change that we need for climate change. We don't have a lot of time here. We do have to change the way we work, the way we eat, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we recreate. These things need to change, and they need to change quickly. And I think COVID it's a bittersweet but brilliant example of how we were able to do that in less than a week. We could flip the system to use less resources. So
Exactly. I truly believe, like George also remarked, that if we get our stuff together on the street corner, in our own communities, the world is no more and no less than an addition of the locals. Don't let anybody tell me that a nation is important, that a continent is important. That is what we are made to believe. So without preaching revolution, at the end of the day, we are only humans. We are only humans, no more and no less. So if we can create this togetherness in what I call a local to global learning space, then we will get new leaders and new politicians that we deserve to be there in place. Yeah? One more thing, when I talk to political fora or councils, or state department things, I too often hear them say, let us talk about the people. That makes me furious, angry. I will start shouting at the same moment. How can an elected group of people, coming from the people, the same evening talk about the people? This is what makes us sick. You understand my point? I cannot accept that a democratically chosen group of us turns around the same day and says, oh, what shall we do about the people? It's actually unacceptable, and still we accept it every day again. We should reconsider.
Another analogy, that it's quite interesting, I think, in between COVID and adaptation. It's the adaptation to extreme event, as said Jessica, and I think it's very important to see how people and government react to this crisis, and there is a lot of apology to have with adaptation to climate change event. And as well, another thing that I see, at least in France, I don't know if it's true all around the world, is that it's a link with vulnerabilities, because we really see with the COVID, that people with vulnerability and partly linked to poverty have been more impacted by the COVID than other, because of building, because of where they are living, because of their money input and a lot of other things. And I think it's like a repetition of what can happen with climate change impact on people, and mostly in vulnerable people.
Yes, that's this system, let me say, of over-exaggerated obedience and being not enough in control also explains this attitude towards people with less development opportunities. If we act from the local, it is impossible to imagine we would hate or disgust or distaste people wherever, either in Ghana or Bangladesh, Peru or Grand Rapids. The local to local is always good, we notice. There is no hate. It sounds very romantic, I know, but we tested this now for 15 years. We first have to teach our youngsters to hate. This sounds very dramatic and don't mean it that negative. But it sometimes appears that what is natural to mankind, we already can live together. We did that for 700,000 years. Sometimes we bang each other's heads when there are too many of us. But it's never the fault of the individual. It's always the system we create gets corrupt, comes down on us, and we recreate, and it goes well for a time, comes down on us again. It is unacceptable that we have an SDG that says we should prevent poverty. I'm deeply, deeply that we have such an LCG.
Well, thank you. And I see a comment from Mara Spears. I love that. The world is no more and no less than accumulation of the local.